Monday evening, everyone. We are coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans in Louisiana, from the United Public Radio Network at 107.7 and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 FM. We are on Roku, we are on Rumble, Tumblr. I'm not sure. Rumble, yeah. Thank you.
Rumble and Roku.
Just get used to that. Facebook and YouTube. We have a new carrier for us on our network. It is Carnation. We love them. I just want you to know that I've loved Carnation since I was a little girl. I used to make my grandfather Carnation instant breakfast every morning, and it did him good. It really did. So happy to have you aboard with us, and we thank you very much. We are live tonight, and we have a really wonderful special guest for you. And I'm just going to go ahead and slam it over to Preston. Let's go.
Slam it over. Okay. Thanks, Dolly. I, of course, am Preston Dennett. I'm your host. My lovely co-host is Dolly Saffron. Thank you for joining us for episode 77 of The Light Gate. So excited about our guest tonight. He's a superstar in the field. Spoke to him recently on Michelle Desrochers' show, The Outer Realm, and he filled in last minute, so huge thanks. And yeah, I'm super excited, but let's just say hi to all you folks in chat, because it's because of you we do this show. It's because of you that Monday is that much brighter for both Dolly and I hope for you guys too. So who do we have here? Looks like we've got quite a nice crowd. Renee Cruz showing up with all kinds of emojis. And Michael Kennedy has the popcorn ready. Hi, Mike. Hope you're doing well.
Love you, Kylie.
We've got Teresa Levine and Peak. Hi, Peak. Woot woot. Lightgate Monday. Oh, we've got a nice crowd in here already. Catherine Jones and Pam Harris. You guys are awesome. Jay Kirshenman here early.
Oh, my. Thank you.
Yeah. Ooh. Hope you're doing well after that crazy Helene. Okay, we got Louise. We have Rat Food. Louise's from New Jersey. Very cool. I love how we reach all over the United States and the world. We've got the Owl Man. Happy Monday. Namaste. I don't know how you do it. We love you so much. Thank you for your endless generosity. We just think the world of you, the universe, honestly, all the stars. Who else we have? Becky Duncan. Hi, Dolly and Preston. Love you guys. Oh, thank you, Becky. We love you too. We got Bambi. We have CT Guitar Guy. It's been a beautiful fall day. Both
yeah.
Beautiful show. Yes, I love the fall season. All the leaves changing. It's beautiful. Okay. We got brilliant design from Montana. We have Star Orchid with a wonderful, generous super chat. Thank you, Star Orchid 8. So kind of you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Bob. Thank you so very much.
Thank you
for joining us. Thank you for your donation. You guys, it means a lot. So thank you. We've got Ruth Kleiber and we've got Scarlet Fire. The entire rainbow of radiation observable to the human eye only makes up a tiny portion of the electromagnetic spectrum.
Sure. This is true.
0.003, that's all we get to see. Well, we're missing out, aren't we?
I keep saying.
That's very interesting. I mean, I knew that, but I didn't realize it was that small.
Yeah.
Okay, I better speed through this because our guest is amazing. I don't want to make him wait too much longer. Mandela Effect, Walking Trees, Jim. Lars, hello from Sweden.
Dolly? Yogaskade. Okay.
Jagalaska Dig. That's how I'd say it.
Oh, okay.
Susan Lawrence, hello, and Leah, and Blind Psychonaut, an octopus with no friends. Great to be among you. You guys are amazing. Olivia, Roswell Alien, Walking Trees, Carnation, and
hello.
Breakfast.
Yeah.
I love the chocolate milk. Nothing like chocolate milk on a cold winter day. So.
Yep.
Okay, who else do we have here? We got Terrence Wills. We've got Henry Jackson in the Wilder Side. And David from the land down under. And Jessica, Thank you, Stephen, for being here. I better bring him in before I get too far down the line here. Hi, John Schaefer's and Catman Trash and Terrence Wills. You guys are so awesome. We got Courtney Houston. We got Yoga with Denise all the way from New York. Wonderful. We got
Awesome.
Vaticanus and Gizmo. We got Scott.
Hi, Gizmo.
Henry Jackson. Thank you, Henry.
Thank you very
You guys
much,
are
Henry.
amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It means so much. You have my endless gratitude. Thank you.
Yes. Your pair network bills. Thank you.
Heiser Soze and
Yep.
Keith Rothwell and Denise Marshall. You guys, it's just so amazing. Tariq, you made it. OG Tariq from Philly. Smash the like button. Yeah, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. Emily and Evan and JR Amadeus Schiffer.
Hello.
We have a big crowd. I better get started. Okay. Yes. Sorry if I missed you guys. Ooh, the outer realm. Woohoo. Okay, let me introduce our guest. If you haven't heard of Stephen Bassett, where have you been? This guy is a superstar in the UFO field. He's truly doing something very important. No one is at his level. Let me tell you a little bit about him. We are so proud and delighted to welcome Stephen Bassett. He's a pioneering and influential UFO researcher and disclosure advocate. He has spoken to audiences in no less than 20 countries about the political implications of UAP, ET phenomena, and disclosure. The formal confirmation by heads of state of an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. That is the end game. We want an official announcement. He is the co-founder of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. Check it out. We'll talk more about that. And executive director of Paradigm Research Group, a 501c3 nonprofit providing education, consulting, analysis, and political activism for a post-disclosure world. He's getting us ready for disclosure. Check out that website. It's massive. It's hugely informative. We'll talk more about that. Stephen's advocacy work has been well covered by national and international media, including the big guys, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, Washington Post, New York Times. He's appeared in many documentary films. His lectures and interviews are very well represented on YouTube. In 2013, PRG, the Paradigm Research Group, organized and conducted a citizen hearing on disclosure at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. In November of 2014, PRG launched a 2-year political initiative out of Washington, D.C. that injected the ET issue into the 2016 presidential campaign. You guys, I don't think you know how important this guy is. He's doing such amazing work. In December of 2023, he co-founded the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance in LA. This is a new media-centric organization aiming to align those working within the UAP ET research arena with writers, directors, producers working across every facet of the global entertainment industry. We're pushing this mainstream. PRG recently launched an activist project, Shift Storm, seeking UAP hearings as soon as possible before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. You can learn more about our guest in the links that are provided in the show description, and we will be displaying those, of course, on the banner as well. But now let's bring in our amazing guest, Stephen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you for coming.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I've been following your research. It was a delight talking to you recently on Michelle's show, The Outer Realm, and I'm so excited that you were able to come in at short notice. So truly appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Okay. Well, as I warned you before we actually started the show, I'm always interested in how our guests got involved in the UFO field. Have you seen a UFO? How does your family feel about what you're doing? You know, how did this all roll up for you? How did you get to the point where you are today?
I've never had a sighting that was worthy of the name, though I've seen videos, of course. Been out on a couple of, what do they call CE5s? Just haven't had it. Not a contactee, though I know many contactees. It was an intellectual thing for me and an activist thing. By the time I had gotten in my late 40s, mid to late 40s, I was really not happy with my life. I hadn't really been very good at anything, to be honest with you. Just didn't have that burning desire to get rich. I was kind of a loose ends. And I really had to come to a very serious decision around that time, 1995. And the basic decision I came to was my personality and who I was really much more about serving than making. In other words, I had spent most of my life trying to make some money, trying to have this and have that, and have these things that people expect to have a quote comfortable life and so forth, which is fine, except I was really terrible at it. And so I had to say, what am I going to do? And then I realized, wait a minute, why not just completely flip this script here? And instead of seeking those things, why don't you just serve? There are plenty of people that do that. They're life of service. We know who they are. They come in many varieties. But that one concept of to serve consistent. But how? And it was at that time that I was introducing myself to this issue. I had not engaged it. I had not joined anything. I simply had paid attention from the sidelines. I thought it was quite interesting, quite convinced it was real. Even going back to when I was a teenager, it was obvious to me, common sense. But so what? A lot of people, I think, felt that way. But in 1995, I needed to make a decision, and I decided this issue was going to be huge, and that it was going to be a major event in human history, and it had all kinds of implications. And that would be a pretty cool thing to serve, but how? And it's not complicated. Pick anything and you say, how do I serve? Well, first volunteer. Why don't you volunteer? Right away, you're serving. Now, trick is pick something cool. Pick something that has the ability to make things better. And I chose this issue, but how? And I just read John Mack's book, Abduction, Human Encounters with Aliens, which was a profound impact on me because of who he was. And the name of his organization, Program for Extraordinary Experience Research, was in the back along with an address and a phone number. And so I said, well, I'll volunteer there. Somehow I was able to convince them to let me do that. And so I packed up, got rid of most everything but what I could fit in my car, drove east, and ended up in Cambridge. Spent about 5 months in Cambridge, volunteering for a peer and soaking up the vibe. Got to meet John a couple of times, I met my first contactees and so forth. But it was while I was there that it came to me how I could serve. And it was politically. I had paid attention to politics. My family had lived in Washington area for 70 years. I knew it. I'd been in and out of it many times, knew it well. And I was politically minded. I'd done some activism in the 70s, marching here, marching there. And so I said, this issue really is a political issue. It's not science. The science has already been proven, frankly, at least the key points. It's a political problem. Government doesn't want to tell you the truth. That's a political decision, frankly, made by the president, enforced by the Congress. So it needs a political solution. And so, okay, I like that. I'm not a researcher. My science degree really had no value by 1995. I didn't follow up. So I said, I'm going to go to Washington and engage politically. And almost immediately, it came to me how to start. And that was to register as a lobbyist. I knew about that. I knew that there was no lobbyist in this area. No one had ever been stupid enough to do it. So no money, nothing but abuse, probably. I don't know. But the point is, we've done it. I said, look, I'll be the first one. And by being the first one, I will attract attention. And that's exactly what happened. Eventually, the Washington Post noticed, who is this dude and why is he crazy enough to register as a lobbyist on extraterrestrial presence and sequestered technology? So they sent out a very fine reporter named Siegel who did an extensive article with a big, huge photo. I might be able to fish it up for you later. And planted that baby on the front page. I mean, the almost the entire front page of the news section of the Washington Post, which is the second most important page in the paper. They didn't know it, but they launched my career right then. And after that, I got awareness and started to try to do things. I'd started with no money and was never able to raise a great deal of money, though I hope to improve on that. But I was operating lean and mean. I had some of the key qualities I had to be able to do what I did was register as a lobbyist. Was one, I had a free place to stay. Two, no family, no wife, no kids, no dog, no cat. Had to eat both of them during bad times. No deals that I was involved in. No obligations. Nobody was going to be harmed if I registered as a lobbyist on this issue. So I was a free spirit, I guess you could say, and I was able to do it. And that was the beginning. And I was right, of course, that it was a political issue, and I've helped shape the politics of this issue, along with others, of course, who have had more money and probably more influence. And that's my story now in its 30th year this year.
Amazing. Wow. So what was the first steps of, when you're lobbying as a lobbyist on this subject? How do you go about doing that? I mean, you just march on Washington with a sign? I mean, how do you do it?
Well, let me tell you a little secret. I registered as a lobbyist, but I couldn't lobby.
Okay, that's a really good answer. I like that answer. Why?
It was like putting a flag in, right?
Okay.
I planted a flag. I said, this issue is important. Why doesn't it have a lobbyist? Well, we knew why, because you couldn't get paid, and nobody was going to listen to you. Nobody was going to meet with you, by and large, unless you had lots of money, which you can walk in the door and say, I was thinking about contributing to your campaign. You have a few minutes. Oh, absolutely. I had nothing. And so I couldn't lobby. I went on the Hill a few times, talked with a couple of interns. I realized this is ridiculous. That's okay. It was the flag. It was making the statement, this issue should have a lobbyist. Now it does. Make what you will. However, what I found out, because I'm really into journalism. I like journalism. I could have been a journalist. I like journalists. They're key to our democracy. I said, I don't want to lobby Congress. I want to lobby journalists. I want to lobby the Washington Post, the New York Times. I want to try to find investigative reporters. I want to lobby because if you get the media more and more to this issue, eventually the Congress learns about it. And so I have spent almost my career engaging media in every way I possibly could. I created a media archive on my site that has now got 15,000 linked articles, mainstream and print articles. You can go read them all, which tell an amazing story through the mainstream media, through basic media journalism, not fancy or fringe stuff, not paranormal. They've actually covered it substantially. They just don't push it. They don't investigate, but they cover it. I have given lectures all over the world. I'm looking forward to doing more international lectures after disclosure. And I've given probably approaching 2,000 interviews, probably more than anyone, including the great Stan Friedman and others, because that's just what I did. I was essentially in a position to be able to do that. And so I'm getting the word out. I'm working with basically citizen journalists and citizen, eventually podcasters and all that. And so in that sense, I became kind of I'm a disclosure advocate whose audience is not the elite academics who really don't want to touch this. It's not the elite journalists, though I'm happy to talk to them. It's the regular people out there who know about this issue, care about it in many cases, and are going to be affected by it, whether they want to be or not. And that's my career in a nutshell.
All right. So with the Washington Post article, that was your first big break, right?
Yep.
So what rolled out after that? I mean, that must have really been a splash.
It led to my first lecture, which I gave in Los Angeles at a press conference. I think Victoria Jack was the producer, not press conference, but conference. And I created a website. So it just, what happens is the more people you know, the more contacts you have, the more influence you have. And I built up a substantial list of contacts and research, but mostly a very substantial media list. And then again, the events, conferences, lectures, all of that, it's a message thing. Activism is many things, but one of them is fundamentally getting out a message over and over and over again, so more and more people get a concept down, understand something that needs to happen. And according to some recent studies, if you can get around 7% of a population of any societal group pretty much committed to a particular change of worldview, it flips the whole society.
100 monkey effect, kind of.
Well, not quite that, but it's rough in that same genre. In other words, you don't need 90% of the people on board. You need about 7%. And of course, anything above that is helpful. And the worldview, or what is needed or what is not happening that should happening, flips. And so 7% of the American people right now is approximately about 23 million. And I assure you, the people that are aware of this issue and interested in this issue far exceeds that.
Absolutely. Worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly true. That's
so I've heard you use the term truth embargo as opposed to cover up. Why would you differentiate those terms?
This is the first time I've been on your show, so let me quickly cover some terms so people won't get confused. When I use the word, when I say truth embargo, in almost every case, in every case, I am referring to the term that I came to give to the government's policy of not letting the people know about this, of denying them the truth of this matter. For most of the last 70 years, it was called, 77 years, called UFO cover-up. But that term is problematic for several reasons. It's not a cover-up, and UFO is a problematic term, not because it's intrinsically wrong, but because it had been the target of all the ridicule and disdain to corrupt the issue and demean the people in it. So UFO became a problem. It's just a bad name. So I called it truth embargo, very much like the embargo of Cuba. Cuba is there, but you can't go there. The difference with the truth embargo in this issue is they're saying there's nothing there, but what is not there, you can't go there. I mean, it's like literally saying there's no Cuba, but if there were, you can't go there. I mean, it's that nuts. But that's why I came up with truth embargo. When I say UAP, most of the time I say UAP, I mean UFO. It's exactly the same thing. But UAP is a term more amenable to journalists and academics and others that are trying to get into this but are worried that it's going to cause them a problem. Nope. I have no qualms about that. So that's what I mean when I say UAP. I mean UFO. But the term has expanded. So UAP finally landed on unidentified anomalous phenomena, which is good because the issue really involves a range of phenomena that isn't just some craft flying by. So unidentified anomalous phenomena is also another way to use UAP. And then when I talk about disclosure, that's where things get a little tricky. I frequently use the term disclosure in its standard usage, which is the effort to get the information out, to get the research done, to study events and take reports and put out books and documentaries. That's all a disclosure process, a revealing process. That's small d disclosure, and I often use that. However, I frequently use the term capital D disclosure. They're pronounced the same way. Hopefully, I make it clear which is which. But when I say capital D disclosure, I'm referring to something quite specific, something that I labeled back around 2000. In other words, language has been some of my contribution to this field. Others have used the term disclosure with a small d, no question about it. But capital D disclosure, I'm afraid I'm going to have to take the TM on that one. It is an event. It is a specific moment. It is an act. An action, a moment. It is when the head of state of a nation comes forward and confirms to their entire citizenry that there's a non-human presence here. They're not alone. There is an extraterrestrial presence. Only from the head of state, not from anybody else, right? That moment is important because it changes everything and opens all the doors that we, at least unlocks all the doors we can go through. It will start with a single head of state and followed almost immediately by almost every other major head of state in the world, probably within a week or 10 days. That's capital D disclosure. So that's what I mean when I'm referring in that regard. I'm referring to that event. And so the disclosure movement comes in two parts. There is the movement to keep getting the information out. Let's hold hearings. Let's pass legislation. Let's form organizations. Let's do conferences. Let's talk to people. That's a movement. And then there's the disclosure movement, capital D, to get to where the president of the United States, hopefully first, but perhaps second or third, comes out and tells us formally, I can confirm to you now, we have non-human intelligence engaging us. May use the word extraterrestrial, may indicate this from other stars. And so there are two movements going on at the same time, and I'm actively involved in both.
All right. So that is basically the end game, you're saying, is just to get the president or any head of state in any country to say, yes, this is real.
Formally confirm it. And by the way, almost certainly that's not going to be a capricious event. It's not going to be, oh, gee, I think I'll just come out and say this. No, there's a lot of things that have to happen that make it possible, which is also very much important and part of, quote, the capital D disclosure movement. And that's happening right now in the United States. And so the combination of all that leads up to that announcement, plus the announcement itself, which is the ultimate disclosure, capital D, is what has to happen if we're going to move into the post-disclosure world. And we can't get there too quickly.
I have a question.
Yes.
You've spoken to experiencers. Have you spoken to anybody in any official capacity behind the scenes at all, within the government structures?
I understand. The nature of my work, the way I have approached this is I've kind of put myself on the front line so I can kind of see what's going on, but I'm not behind the lines, right? I'm not somebody that goes on the, inside the lines of the other side and is, cruising around and spying or whatever, talking to people on the field, gathering information. That's the kind of thing that investigative journalists do. That's the kind of thing that some activists can do. But I haven't done that. I've had some contact with some people that are not necessarily out front, but really nothing significant. Now, I get reports back from some colleagues who are behind the lines, all right, behind the front line and kind of dealing with that stuff. But I've kind of stayed in that position. There are advantages to being in that position as opposed to being behind the lines. There's disadvantages as well, but that's my position. So I haven't had any meetings in a garage in Roslyn with some whistleblower or anything like that. I don't get calls in the middle of the night. I do have some people occasionally get in touch. They have information, but I'm not the one they call. George Knapp maybe, and others. Linda Moulton House, she gets, I think, those calls, but I don't.
Okay. Well, that leads me into this next question, and that would be, what is your opinion of why they aren't disclosing? Have you any inkling of that?
Oh, I have plenty of thoughts about it. That's for sure. I mean, in 30 years, you're going to develop some strong opinions. And I'm happy to share them, but I think your audience needs to understand that one of the roles that I have is to try, again, as a populist advocate and activist, is to try to give people an understanding of what's going on. Because you don't know what's going on. Why should you care? Why should you sign up? Why should you donate any money? Why should you join an organization?
But have you gone into any of the disclosure meetings with other people who are interested in disclosure, like any of the congressional meetings like that?
Well, there have been none virtually until recently. There were virtually none of those. I was, I missed the hearings in '66 and '68 because I was, just too young. I was in the room for the Grush hearing in front of the House subcommittee. And I intend to be in any other rooms, and I'm prepared to do whatever it takes, short of felonies, to ensure that.
Don't do that. Yeah.
No. But again, I go to I'm involved in events in this field. I'm involved in conferences all the time, and so forth. I've never joined an organization that was intentional. I did not want to anybody to feel that my activism was in any way favoring this organization over that organization, or that I'm carrying the agenda. And so I've been a freelancer in that regard.
Okay.
So the average person, say in the United States, certainly knows about UFOs, but why should they, care about disclosure? How will disclosure benefit all of humanity? Why should we care what the government thinks or
Okay,
says?
so that's a question, but then Dolly had another question, which I still haven't answered. So there are two questions there.
Okay.
Why are they keeping this embargo, and why should we care? They're just trivial questions, which I can easily spend 5 hours on without breath. I'm not going to do that. But the point I was trying to make before I naturally went off the rails, which I do all the time, is that my job is to try to explain this. However, you see, this that we're talking about, the government has gone to enormous lengths to ensure that we don't have that information, has even thrown disinformation into the bucket, has intimidated people. In other words, it's done everything it can to keep this story from hitting the big screen, right? And so it's like there are X number of dots that you need to connect to understand what has happened historically and currently, but the government has hidden the majority of those dots, right? Even thrown some phony dots out there. And so you are at a huge disadvantage. The best you can do is using logic and common sense, and not getting too far from Occam's razor, is to try to connect those dots in spite of the fact that many are missing. So with respect to the question, why have they not told us the truth? The reasons I give are, I think, reasonable, and I think will hold up, but they're not, it's not like an historical record or something, I assure you, but it is a number of things. But the single most important reason why the truth embargo has lasted this long, which is amazing, 77 years. I mean, it's one thing to hide something in a basement somewhere and make it a secret and nobody knows unless you go in the basement. It's another thing to tell the world that something is not happening when it's happening all the time, day in and day out. How do you do that? It's obviously not a secret. It's what? It's in fact an embargo. In other words, it's the emperor's new clothes. The emperor's naked, but you're supposed to see clothes. Of course, it's the reverse of that. The emperor is fully clothed, but you're supposed to see the emperor is naked. Okay, it's the reverse of that fable. It's nuts, but they've gotten away with it. In any event, the number one reason that they succeeded is that the history of the modern era of the UFO phenomena virtually coincides, and it's not an accident, with the era of the nuclear arms race and the Cold War. They are side by side, and they have developed and expanded side by side. So you start with a limited, possibly in a couple of events prior to World War II, if true, incredibly tightly held. Probably no one knew about them. Then you've got some events during World War II that got a little bit of interest, primarily plasma balls surveying battlefields and or going along with their airplanes, doing no harm. No big deal. We had a war to fight. But then we ended the war with nuclear weapons, dropped them on civilians in Japan. And then right after that, the phenomena starts taking off in a way that it hadn't for thousands of years. I think we had a lot of ET contact thousands of years ago, but it wasn't like
No
this.
doubt. Yeah.
Okay. It was like whatever species they were, it didn't matter. They were all gods to us. And so they could come down, do whatever the hell they want. There's no TV, there's no internet, there's no, that nothing was going to, be documented going forward pretty much. And they came and went. So if you were an ET anywhere in the near galaxy and you wanted to feel like a god, you just headed to the Earth for a little god time. And that was kind of what was going on then. And then it just stops. I don't know exactly when, but let's just say after Christ, after the era of Christ, after the end of the Roman Empire, hardly anything is happening. That's really significant. And as we go forward in time, the ability to record stuff is actually improving. And so you would think that if they were active continually, you'd have this sort of constant record, not just the odd painting here and there. I think they just kind of shut down. But in 1945, that changed. And so from that point forward, the nuclear arms race and the threat of nuclear annihilation has continued to grow every single year. And the ET presence, the ET phenomena, has also expanded throughout that time. And it is that reason why the truth embargo was fundamentally going to be maintained, because the defense and technological implications of that ET presence was in the minds of all of those in every country, particularly major countries and nuclear countries, who were, quote, playing the nuclear arms race game. It was a major problem. And from their point of view, it had to be embargoed. It could not become a thing. It had to be contained. And it wasn't evil or sinister. I think that most of the decision makers, starting right in the late 40s, all the way up even to recently, viewed the potential for this thing becoming a worldwide known phenomena as a risk to creating a nuclear war. And obviously that is a very powerful motivation to keep it going, keep the truth embargo going, maintain the secrecy, all the intelligence and everything else. And so the truth, that is not the only reason, but the nuclear arms race is the number one basis by which, whenever it was brought up in a meeting, is it time to tell the people? The answer is going to be not yet.
All right, that makes sense. I've always felt that, to some extent, the cover-up is just due to, that's the policy they adopted very early on. One.
Yeah.
Another is, greed, power, control of the whole narrative.
I hear that. I'm a little more generous there. There's always been greed and power. It's always been there, right? I mean, that didn't get invented because the ET showed up. And so elements of that certainly are there. But I don't think there's enough appreciation by the general public that have become pretty much, how would you say, numb to the fact that they could be gone tomorrow, that everything that they consider important and valuable would be gone and turned into radioactive mist. They just have numbed themselves to that, because you can't think about that day in and day out. That's my job. All right. And so because they've numbed themselves to it, they have disconnected. And so it's hard for them to get what I just said, which is that if you are a decision maker, if you're a President Clinton, Clinton, going back to Truman, Eisenhower, if you are Hillenkotter, if you are Dulles, if you are any of the major players, Winston Churchill, from that era, right? It was for them a serious problem that this phenomena was now obviously manifesting. They couldn't stop it. There's nothing they could do. And the technology was clearly revolutionary. They had crash vehicles early on. They could not confirm one way or the other if other major nations had crash vehicles, which meant there was a potential for a extraterrestrial technology weaponization race. These are the things they were facing. And as defenders of the country, I have to grant them a considerable amount of leeway there. And so I believe that is where the emphasis should be. In other words, a little more respect for what they had to deal with back then. In other words, try not to get into presentism, as it's presently called, where you try to judge what people did 77 years ago based on what we know now. That's not the way. The world doesn't work that way. And so I try not to go there.
One of the things that I was taught on both sides of this is to know all that is knowable and then proceed. And being a military brat and a daughter of a military person who worked in the government and worked most of his life in the government, I've learned three things. One is they hide things because they are in control and they don't want to give their, quote, enemies their technology. Yeah. That's kind of funny now because everybody's developing this technology. And unless we ask all the questions up front and dot our I's and cross our T's and answer all of those questions about this situation from both sides of the perspective, there's no way we are going to totally understand anything, because right now we are in anarchy on this planet worldwide. And you have to take those facts into effect. One of the things that is noticeable, yes, they positively showed up more often when nuclear age started, because they were very concerned about our nuclear capabilities and what we were going to stupidly do to ourselves with them. This is an advanced race. And yes, they have got their craft and they bloody well know how they drive them, operate them, and what energy forms they're using. And it is so advanced, they know that nuclear isn't something that we should be playing around with. We've been warned against it. It's a weaponized killing thing. Mm-hmm. And there's no excuse for that, none. And ET does feel that way about it. I have personal information about that. And until we ask ourselves, what are we doing here? Who are we serving? You serve us as well as them when you go to lobby for us for disclosure. And I want you to understand that when you serve only one thing and not weigh both sides of it, you're asking for someone to use you at that point. And I'm concerned a little bit by what you're saying to us now, because the government could very well start using your rhetoric in their favor, and they will. And they probably are starting to now, because I'm hearing bits and pieces of, national security problems. Okay.
Yeah.
ATIP, all those guys, and UAP is the government's words, not yours or anybody else's. It was planned into our rhetoric so that you would use it and you would help keep disclosure a problem. When you use smoke and mirrors or plausible deniability as your game board, you can do anything you want. And if you have no question in your mind that disclosure would only bring you problems, because once the American people or worldwide people understood what this was really all about and all the implications of it and everything that is involved, they would understand two things, rapidly understand them. They've been withholding the truth about everything, and that is a fault of theirs.
Yeah.
And that makes them culpable liars. And not with our best interests in mind. That makes them rulers over us with that information. And this concerns me greatly. I want disclosure, but I want disclosure in full in the way that it should be. And I'm not so sure having a world government leader say this is happening, because what you might get, think about this, clearly think about this. What you might get is now it's a national security problem worldwide and ETs are coming for you.
Well, they're already pushing that.
That's right.
They're pushing.
It's an agenda. And when I see agendas, I know that somebody's not telling me the truth. Okay. I automatically start questioning everything they say. And I've
they're
been
going to use everybody in this field, no matter what. They're going to spin it the way they want.
I know. And you have to understand something else. Governments have levels of intelligence, and not everybody is in control of that. Those who are absolutely in control everything. And you can't tell a president to disclose to you when he doesn't really have that information, or he might have a piece of it and has been told your family goes right along with you if you do, that you do it our way. And then they wait for the buildup within this governmental system to where they've taken over and disclosure is their agenda. And they have reasons why. That's the problem. We have reasons why.
Well, that leads to my next question then. Who exactly is behind disclosure? Or I mean, the truth embargo, sorry.
Yeah,
it's not so much the president, is it? It's not so much the governors or the Congress. It's intelligence agencies, I'm guessing, or the highest levels of the military, Navy, Air Force?
Well, any major program that a nation has is going to have those behind it, which are the appropriate people to deal with it. Right? In other words, who's behind our strategic our triad, right? Our nuclear triad that is designed to be the deterrence to anybody attacking us with nuclear weapons. This is a vast complex involving huge sums of money being spent every year. And there are people in multiple services and intelligence agencies and so forth. And of course, the DOD, the Department of, the Congress is involved because they have a certain level of oversight. They get briefed. The Gang of Eight has certain clearances. The president's involved as chief of staff and so forth. So there's nothing unusual about that. And so who's behind the truth embargo? Well, here's where it gets tricky, because since the government must insist that, and has to insist and has, that there are no extraterrestrials here, therefore there is no truth embargo, that therefore the whole question about who's behind it is, from their point of view, moot. However, an awful lot of research has been done by an awful lot of our colleagues for very little money, if none, in order to try to at least connect as many dots as possible and get research. And they have gotten a lot of information together. They've gotten a lot of documents to FOIA. They've talked to people. They've done an extraordinary job. They could have been done in a far less amount of time, but of course the truth embargo has stretched it out. But we have a general idea. The truth embargo is being managed, right, by individuals working from highly classified programs. Those individuals have managers. There is a sort of, I guess, the programs are isolated from each other. That's called stovepiping.
Right.
In the program itself, oftentimes you have a situation where a compartmentalization takes place, where there may be 100 people working in this USAP, but no one of them knows everything that's going on. They're only working on a particular area, and that tends to help keep things contained. And then you've got non-disclosure agreements and other laws protecting all of this above that, right? You have some people that are somewhat high up and in managerial capacity. The legendary MJ12 group is a logical thing that would have been created at the time. Something like that has probably continued on, though it could have been changed all these years. And you take all of that and all the people that have been involved, which over the last 70 years is in the tens of thousands, all right? They have conducted the engagement of this issue. They have maintained the truth embargo, and a lot of money was spent. And we don't know the degree of success they've had with understanding the technology and the science, or actually re-engineering. We don't know the extent. We can guess. There's some dots there, but we don't have the full clear picture by any means.
Right. That's why you want disclosure. You're trying to find that out. You're trying to find out what it is that they've been up to and doing all this time, because it involves all of us worldwide at this point. It's not a joke anymore. It is unsustainable for them to keep going in this direction unless they have a plan for something. And still, again, I posit that we should all be aware of it, not just them, everybody. And I'm not talking about the U.S., everybody. Yeah.
The way I phrase it is, and this is true of a lot of things, the truth embargo probably was justified, though they didn't call it that, but what they were doing was probably justified starting in 47. I get it. They thought they were kind of clear for about 5 years, and then the ETs did a serious flyover of Washington, D.C. in 52, scared the hell out of them, which they got really serious. And then the Cold War just took off. By 1980, mid-80s, we had in excess of 80,000 nuclear warheads, either in launch capability or stockpile, which, I mean, it's just a ludicrous thing. I mean, it's enough to destroy the world 10 times over, maybe 100 times over. And so that was, nothing was going to change. The first opportunity for something to change was when the Soviet Union collapsed. And you had the end of, they gave up 14 republics. They outlawed the Communist Party. And right around 1990, 1991. And then you had President Clinton come in, though it was, they thought it would be George W. Bush. And if it had been George H.W. Bush, rather, I think we might have gotten disclosure in the early 1990s. But he lost and Clinton won. But that was a major change in the world situation, where literally the other major nuclear power, the Soviet Union, gave up, said, look, we can't afford this. It's not working. And they had some enlightened leadership come in. They gave up 14 republics. They were the largest landmass unit of any sovereign area in the world. And ironically, after giving up 14 republics, they are still the largest landmass of any country in the world. All right. They gave that up. They outlawed their party, brought back religion. And that was the window. And so, but we didn't get through the window. It didn't work. And there's a number of reasons for that. But for me, the the policy of truth embargo's shelf life ended around 1991, 1992. In other words, every year after that, it's been sitting on the shelf, basically rotting, all right, like fruit. And of course, the smell is getting worse and worse and worse. And so I'm pretty generous with the government and its policies on this issue up to 92.3 on the Rockefeller Initiative. But after that, my generosity starts to erode pretty quickly. And eventually it becomes not just a bad policy, it becomes ludicrous, it becomes dangerous and worse, right? And these are connected. There's this incredible connection between the arms race, the domestic, I mean, the foreign policies, the UN, the ET presence, and it's very complicated. All I know is that we didn't get the truth embargo. We didn't end the truth embargo under Clinton, which we could have, or maybe even under HW, though Gore would have been a better choice for that. And before you know it, the nuclear arms race comes back. Nuclear nonproliferation stops. Nuclear weapons reduction stops. Nuclear weapons advancement starts getting into place. The U.S. gets caught doing antimatter research, which they quickly hid but are still doing, which is the most dangerous technology.
Actually, antimatter, I can clue you into that and give you information that you don't have. You ready?
Feel free, please.
CERN created 7 and then 11 molecules, proton molecules of antimatter in a containment field.
Right.
It did not hold. It went. And we all know scientifically that antimatter can't exist in our third dimension universe because we cancel it out the second it happens. You cannot create enough antimatter even to get to use it as a weapon because it automatically starts losing containment within days. It lasted 14 days, just so you know.
Why did it lose? They had it contained in a magnetic field, correct?
That's right. Because
why did that break down? Why did
you
that
ready?
break?
Because our sun is now shooting gamma radiation at us at a higher accelerated rate. We're changing our poles. Our magnetosphere is down 40%, and it's dangerous for us to even try to do that now, period.
Okay.
That's why.
I don't understand how
You need to look up everything I say to you. It'll back me up 100%. You can't hold magnetic containment when every magnetic field on this planet is chaotic, erratic, and being bombarded by our own sun. And it won't stop anytime soon.
What if you were able to, what if the gathering process and the magnetic field that was being, by the way, this whole idea was the one place where this whole idea was perfectly brought together was a movie called Angels and Demons. One of those series. It was the one that followed Da Vinci Code, and where the idea of containment of antimatter was at the center. It was the MacGuffin in the movie. But what if you're able to gather and then store within magnetic containment antimatter, but in an extremely deep underground and/or protected area that's not affected by any changes in the Earth's magnetic status?
Completely impossible. We are magnetic to our core. Our core responds to our sun magnetic impulses. They're in concert with one another or circuit. And when the sun pops off, the Earth responds. So coming and going, you can't contain anything magnetically on this planet. Not even try.
Unless they came
He doesn't fly here right now, as a matter of fact, because of what's going on magnetically on our planet, in our solar system. We are too chaotic right now with our pulse changing, and they bugged out 2 years ago. And the U.S. government and every other world government on this planet knows this. That's why I say to you, know all that is knowable first.
Who bugged out?
ET. They are no longer flying here. The only thing that flies here, and to our chagrin, they crash them all the time, are our back engineered craft. TR-3B is the #1 lead one that's floating around up there, and they crash on a regular basis. They've got several other models that they're flying, and they use nuclear to fly them because they can't use the same energy that ET uses. They're dangerous. They're flown autonomously. In other words, they don't have pilots on board. They're too dangerous even for the pilots to be on board these craft. And it is a back-engineered technology to use in a fight or a war.
Well, that leads to other questions, but we do need to take a quick station ID break. So hold on just a second, guys. I want to let you all know that you are watching The Light Gate. This is episode 77. I'm your host, Preston Dennett. My co-host is Dolly Safran. Our guest tonight is disclosure advocate Stephen Bassett. We've been talking all about how we got involved in this field, being the first lobbyist to end the truth embargo, the reasons behind the cover-up, all kinds of stuff like that. But we do want to let you know we are streaming on several platforms. We are on Roku. If you have Roku, check us out there. We are on Rumble. We're on Facebook. We are on YouTube. And we are also streaming live at 107.7 FM at the UFO Paranormal Radio Network and the United Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 in the beautiful city of New Orleans. We've got another hour to go in the show. It's quite a spirited discussion. Keep your questions coming because we'll get to them as the show begins to wind up. Some good questions for you, Steve. I hope that that's all right to bring them out at some point.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't think you ever quite addressed my question is why should the average person care about disclosure? And I think probably you did kind of in a sense because it's connected
Oh, absolutely.
to nuclear.
He answered you. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is a very complex question and a complex answer, and that's one of the barriers to getting this done. Most of the activist movements of the 20th century, and the 20th century was loaded with some of the great activist movements of human history, were pretty straightforward. Probably a perfect example of an absolutely clean, simple activist movement was the women's suffrage movement. Women wanted the right to vote. They couldn't vote. And so they went out and did what was necessary to change that policy. And they got an amendment that gave them the right to vote. What could be simpler than that? Now the question would be, why should women care? And that gets interesting because there were women that didn't want the right to vote. They felt it was going to, well, let me put it this way. It was going to make their life more complicated. It was going to draw them into the political process, which is kind of unwieldy and unseemly at times. And it would disrupt what they felt was a comfortable lifestyle. But the majority of women wanted it to vote, and I wanted to vote, and I think that is certainly the case now. Civil rights movement, somewhat similar, and so forth. This is not like that at all. Why should the average person care that the government of the United States and other governments finally end this, increasingly ludicrous policy of denying the obvious, all right, and not letting us know this? I get a couple of basic answers for that, but believe me, the full answer will be written up at great length by lots of historians and others, lots of books to try to explain it. But there are two fundamental reasons that come to mind. And probably the most important is this, and it gets back to what Dolly was saying earlier. At the beginning of World War I, there was 1.2 billion people on this planet. Plenty of space for everybody, though the technological levels were less, and so resources a little more difficult to get to, but overall 1.2 billion people. The beginning of World War II, it was about 2 billion people, maybe 2.2, beginning of World War II. Not too many. We had a huge war, killed a lot of people off, all right? And then after World War II began a significant era of economic and technological development, promising the potential to be able to use tech to provide the basic needs of the population of the world: food, clothing, shelter, toilets, that kind of thing. If people have got the basics, they're able to lead a life that is satisfying, and there's less reason to be unhappy. There's less reasons to be violent. There's less reasons to go to war. But that's not what happened. What happened was we launched ourselves on the nuclear arms race, which continues to this day. And the total cost of that arms race globally, plus all of the proxy wars, were made possible under the umbrella of mutual assured destruction, meaning nuke power could have a war here, and another nuke power couldn't interfere because that nuke power could nuke them. And so it was like, hey, you want to have a war, have a war. Is in tens, if not 20, 40, 50, 60, $100 trillion in modern dollars adjusted for inflation. So all that money went to that, all right? Meanwhile, the population went from 2 billion to 8 billion. And so we ended up having a situation the world becomes more desperate, more crowded, The amount of money to take care of people's basic needs is not there. War continues. Genocide continues. In other words, we really screwed things up. If you thought things were screwed up leading to World War I or World War II, it's nothing like now. And now we're on a pattern. Right now, we're in a zone right now that virtually mimics the lead up to World War I and the lead up to World War II. So we're headed for World War III. All right. And we have all of the other problems that 8 billion people would have. And we can't solve them. We can't do anything. We can't negotiate anything. We can't fix anything. We cannot deal with any major problem on this planet, because when things get bad, instead of cooperating, people just they just tighten up and can only think of their own immediate needs. If that means becoming a terrorist and blowing yourself up, do that. If that means buying bunkers, deluxe bunkers and trying to live underground, you do that. Whatever. And we are in a terrible, awful position. My personal prospects for the human race in this planet are barely measurable, and we're screwed. I believe that a nuclear war is inevitable. I believe that even worse than that is inevitable. I believe that the planet, which is sort of a living entity, you call it Gaia, fine, but it is a balanced living structure. And the way it balances itself is when things get really out of whack, it deals with it. And it's about to deal with us. All right. And it's going to kill a lot of us in order to try to get back to something that makes sense. And so all hell is in store. Okay. So for that reason comes disclosure. Why? Because the only way that we're going to get out of this is a whole lot of people, not just thousands, not just millions, hundreds of millions, maybe a few billion, a whole lot of people have got to have a change of worldview where they suddenly start to see the world and their place in it differently. And if we don't have that change of worldview, which can't be trivial, it's got to be massive, we're done.
Yep.
One of the things that I see happening, and you're exactly correct in what you're saying, okay? Mm-hmm. We are in anarchy right now, and we are headed for exactly all of this. One of the things that people are coming up with now to change worldview is that they are establishing that ET must protect them somehow. There are millions of people all over this planet who believe that ET will come and rescue them at the last minute. And that could be farther from the truth. Mm-hmm. There is absolute proof that they have not interfered with this planet in any substantial way other than to try to guide when guiding was necessary or helpful to us, mm-hmm. and then backing off when we lose our minds. There's nothing else you can do as even a parent. If you've got a child that's going nuts, you do what you can and then you back off and you let that child come to it or lose it completely. And we're there. And we all need, one of the things that I want to say to you is that this is the result of lying by omission to us and everybody else. When you compartmentalize an entire let's count. Since 1950, we have multiple generations who have been lied to, compartmentalized, trained wrong, dumbed down, starved, and hit with unbelievable terror and tragedy, okay? So these people aren't really thinking clearly to begin with. Now we've got a planet and a solar system that's in flux. It's not just our planet that's changing its poles. Every single planet in our solar system is changing its poles. Our sun is changing its poles. It is serious stuff that happens every 12,000 years. This is known empirical truth, data. They know this. They have evidence of it going all the way back hundreds of thousands of years, and they know this is really happening. We have biblical data on it. It's a serious event coming at us. Instead of helping us all get ready for it and working together in truth, peace, and helping one another and serving one another, as you're trying to do right now, we have gone straight into anarchy, and there's every evidence that they're planning the demise of at least good 3/4 of this planet. 1% might survive it if they're lucky, okay? That's what's going to happen. Those are the real numbers when you talk about nuclear events. I'll give you one further. The nuclear plants on this planet, our power plants, are nuclear fallout waiting to happen, because if you EMP somebody in a war and that power plant shuts down, it will melt down and it will cause devastation all over the place. And every state in our union has at least 3 reactors, 3 apiece. Now, you got to know that we're not that stupid. We know that they know this. You can't be a scientist and not know the science and not know what you're doing when you do it. And yet they did it anyway. Ask yourself why. What is the purpose of all of this? What I would like to see in disclosure is that we walk on them, period. Everybody just open up. ET's been trying to talk to people for years. They're coming here over and over and over again. Hasn't been to cause wars, hasn't been to scare people. It's been to show themselves and say, you know, you got issues, you need to pay attention. You know?
So what can the average person do to help move this forward?
Let us join with you.
Well, the average person, well, you sort of moved on. The average person, the vast majority of the average person are not going to do anything, and they don't need to do anything. But there are plenty of people that do need to do something. I want to get back to an important point there.
Okay.
When I talk about worldview, I'm not talking about speculative worldview. Right now, in the absence of full understanding, people are speculating about what could be going on. And that is a effect on their worldview. I mean, it's like, you know, a speculation, a concern, a paranoia. That's kind of part of your worldview. That's not a particularly constructive thing, right? The worldview I'm talking about is what happens when people learn a fundamental truth that clearly alters perspective in a large scale way. So disclosure, which in itself is a fundamental, simple truth. We're not alone. Guess what? That's been the case. We didn't tell you now before, we're telling you now. And so in a short amount of time, the entire planet will get confirmation that they're not alone. That's not all the information, but it is that fundamental thing. We're not alone in the galaxy, and we have visitors. That is a simple truth, without getting into the details, that has the power to change the worldview of not just a few people, but of billions of people, and not change it over a long period of time, right? Like Christianity was a worldview changer, but it took hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years to really start to get to a large group of people and could never keep up with population growth. We're talking about a worldview change that will be the fastest, the broadest, and the most impacting of any in history. It is unprecedented. It'll be the biggest paradigm change of all time. And some people's worldview and leaders will change profoundly, and a lot of people just a little bit. But if you change the worldview of, say, 3 billion people even a little bit, that is a significant change. And that gets to the point that I was trying to make. Why do we care? If we do not have a worldview change at that level, and there's no book, no Jonathan Livingston Seagull or whatever that can be written and everybody will, oh my God, read this, change your world. No, we've had plenty of great books. Didn't do it. It's got to be something of this magnitude. If we don't have something of this magnitude, then we are not going to make it. And so for me, disclosure of the ET presence, which is overdue and may not make it in time, is the only way out of this hole that we have dug. It is the only ladder big enough to reach the top of this hole, and we're down in the pit. If we don't get disclosure, it's over. All right. Now I'm being a little bit dramatic, but I can tell you,
not dramatic enough. I agree with you 100%.
30 years
Absolutely.
Of
one of the things that I want to make clear here, though, okay, is the government's hoping that will happen for one reason and one reason only, because without the truth, without the entire factual laying out of what, where, when, who, and why, people will become afraid. They will be easily led into destructive thinking. Okay. The world leaders have more control over your thoughts than you realize, or what you think, or what you see, or how you handle anything. They have taken control of the narrative, absolutely taken control. So disclosure literally needs to be the truth.
Of course.
Okay. All across the board. They need to lay it down. And I don't care how embarrassed they get or how it makes them look.
Right.
Okay. Because that's what they're afraid of, because they do have an agenda and they don't want you to know until they spring it on everybody. And that's what I'm telling you. That's what we got to be careful of. So for us all to realize that we already have disclosure, you had disclosure without even seeing one that you could call one. Think about that. Intelligence is intelligence.
We all know UFOs are real, but they're just they won't admit it. It's like your analogy.
we need to ask ourselves why they're not disclosing more than we need for them to disclose.
Well, I gave you one reason. I gave
Okay.
you one reason why they're not
Okay.
doing it. Okay. The other reason is that as the truth embargo aged and got worse and the shelf life was over, it became a huge public relations problem. And that's another reason nobody wants to be the one that has to answer those questions. Nobody wants to be on board the ship when it has to, when it's, you know, sinking. They want to get retire or die and let somebody else have to do that. And so it's like there's a lot of people that just don't want to face the music, and I get that. And part of preparing for disclosure is setting up an infrastructure and getting information out to the public to mitigate, to the extent possible, how unpleasant it's going to be for the people on board when disclosure happens. Now, keep in mind, the majority of people that have maintained this truth embargo, they're gone. They're either dead or retired. And so we're dealing with the new people that have had to keep the thing afloat, right? And so one of my jobs is to try to mitigate that a little bit, but that is a problem, right? It is embarrassing. It is awkward. And so they don't want to do it. Okay. So you've got that. Now, in terms of another reason why people need to care about this, which is secondary to the fundamental fact that we've put ourselves in an untenable position. If we don't have a major worldview shift, we're done. Is that on a more just a basic level, the truth embargo, which is not a secret, the United States government has maintained lots of secrets since over its time. Certainly during World War II, secrecy is key to winning wars. Its intelligence is the key to winning wars. It's maintained a lot of secrets, right? And people know that. So they know that the whereabouts and locations of our nuclear submarines at any given time is a secret. Okay, I get it. I understand. If I wanted to know that, you're not going to tell me. And I appreciate that. No problem. All right. But the truth embargo is not that.
Right.
The truth embargo, and the governments do lie from time to time. They lied about a couple of things that helped get into Vietnam. They lied about some things that helped get into Iraq, and we don't like that. And it's really nasty, and it makes us angry. But the truth embargo is even worse than that, because in order to maintain the truth embargo for 77 years, the government has had to lie every single day. Every day, no breaks, no vacations, nothing. It is a 77, 24/7 lie that's like a cancer in the body politic that is just going to grow. You can't, there's nothing you can do to slow it down. And it's going to kill the body politic. And that's what it helps do. The truth embargo has contributed proportionally more than most things you could point at to undermining the fundamental trust of the American people in their own government, a relatively successful democratic republic. But as all democratic nations know, if they don't know, they better find out, is that the ability to sustain democracy is fundamentally based on the confidence of the public in the government. That is not needed in dictatorships. The dictator and authority don't give a damn whether you believe them or don't believe them. If you're not happy, they'll be happy to kill you and take you out of your misery. Democracies thrive on trust and truth. And to the extent you start getting away from that, they start to crumble. That's why they don't tend to last very long. Now, the U.S. has been pretty successful, but in the last 70 years, the trust in government has been slowly collapsing and has now reached a point of such absurdity, which, and this is the nature of the world. And, the fact that technology brought us mass global communications and individual interactions and social media and networking and everything else, where everybody could be a journalist and everybody could have their say, thus creating a massive platform for lies and disinformation. Hey, that's technology. It was going to happen regardless. However, if you're already going into an expanding zone of institutional lying, and that shows up, guess what? It just gets worse. And so the effect of technology, social media, combined with the corruption of government and the lack of trust, it is literally shredding the American democratic system to the point of breaking it. And so how do you get out of that? Well, yeah, you can take the phone away from kids at school. You can limit your online time, but you need something really big that sends a message to everybody in this country that we, as your servants, would like to get back in the truth business. We would like you to trust us again, not because we've learned to lie better, but because we really want to start telling you the truth. Now, if you're going to make that shift and you're going to do it quickly, being more forthright about the agricultural numbers or whatever the hell, some small details or the inflation rate is not going to cut it. You need something big. Well, this is the biggest lie of all time. And so by ending the truth embargo, they're sending this massive message to the entire American people. We're going to end this. We're going to get you the truth on this. We're going to let you know what's going on. Now, the other aspect of that is that this event, the end of the truth embargo, disclosure of a capital E, is so huge, so profound, will be so massively engaged by the world, if not everybody in this country, certainly by the world, that I think it literally triggers. It's like one of those heart valves. Once you go through that valve, you can't back up. And I think that after the truth embargo ends, we're going to go into the truth business. And it's almost become the thing to do. In other words, first of all,
I would love that.
Ending that lie, the focus worldwide on the issue and everybody connected to it, which is pretty much every national security structure in the world, is going to be like electron microscopes. Everybody is focused on the next thing you're going to say. And so anybody that walks out in the Department of Defense briefing room or the White House briefing room in order to mitigate the post-disclosure hiccups that are happening wants to throw a bold-faced lie out there in order to make it easier. That thing is going to be literally taken. It's going to be shredded and by the internet and rammed back down their throat. And so if they have any wisdom at all, they're going to tell nothing but the truth.
I hope so.
All the time.
You know, there's a way to know the truth. You realize this, right? Of every day, every person on this planet, there's a way to know the truth.
Psychic-ability?
Yes. And that's what ET promotes. Every experiencer you've ever talked to, I guarantee you, has had that message in their mouth. We need to wake up. We need to experience our abilities because you can't hear the truth the way we are right now.
Yeah, look, education reduction and the collapse of education systems makes it harder to know the truth. But so it's not so simple. But the U.S. government, a nation, hopefully ours, is going to be the leader to end this embargo. All the other nations will follow. Now, the autocracies like Russia, like China, North Korea, they're not going to suddenly get in the truth business. Believe me. However,
if it benefits them, they will.
But
they're trying. Yeah, all the other governments in the world right now have the same exact problem we do. You think they don't, but they do. If you sit down and go there and you look at what's happening to them, every problem we have right now, they have also. It is not coincidental at all. And this is one of the steps leading toward worldwide rule by somebody, and planning a worldwide war is that way to go. When World War II happened, that was the way they were trying to go, but it didn't work. Everybody got smarter than that. But now we've been dumbed down for many, many, many years. Yeah. And we have technology against us, and people running that technology are going to make it really difficult on everybody. That's why each individual needs to hear the truth. Period.
I think what we honestly need to do is make it to our own government's benefit to tell the truth. Then they'll do it. If it helps them, they will be motivated. But here's my question before we get to some of the questions in chat is how hopeful are you of success? You know, as Leah asking, will this happen in time to save us? How close do you think we are to getting, you know, your end game of a head of state saying it's real? Very close. Remarkably close. I can spend hours talking about that, but 77 years on, we're on the 2-yard line. And yet, and this is, I don't know if this is just baked into the historical context, but at the same time, we're this close to disclosure. We're also this close to nuclear war.
That's right.
The closest we've ever been. 90 seconds to midnight doomsday. Back in 1997 or 8, I created the paradigm clock, which is, I still have it up on my site. The paradigm clock is midnight is truth embargo. It's disclosure, right? End of the truth embargo. And I managed it for years. In other words, I I would move it up and down depending upon events, but it was pretty laborious. And finally I stopped. But overall, the idea was to marry it up to the doomsday clock. So I retroactively started the paradigm clock in 1947, like the doomsday clock was started, and just try to show how events have gotten us closer to disclosure, further away, and whatever. It was a concept, but I still use it. I put it out because it's really a simple race at this point.
I have one really important question to ask you before anybody answers any other questions. Why did Schumer kill the bill?
He didn't kill the bill. I can get into that. I mean, why don't we hold off on that, because that's a whole bunch of stuff I'm going to tell you about what's happened recently. Okay. And I'm almost done with a bigger picture. Okay. So we're now in a race. What's going to happen first? A nuclear war or a paradigm clock hitting midnight disclosure? And it's way too close. I did not. We would have had disclosure from Clinton in 2017 if she had won the election. That was all set up. It was on the way. I'd take some credit there. We had really gotten the issue out. It was into the political arena in a way it had never been. She was already on the record. And that's one of the reasons the To the Stars Academy, I believe, was created. And I believe their plan was to come out right after her election, probably during the transition period, do all that stuff they did, go to the New York Times, whatever the hell. And then she takes office and boom, we get disclosure in 2017, but it didn't work out. Events, historical events, happens all the time, have resulted in a 7-year extension, right? Now, in those 7 years, an extremely lot of nasty stuff has happened, unfortunately. We've had political chaos in the United States. We have had, obviously, a worldwide pandemic, which puts huge stress on every country, poor or rich, causing all kinds of disruptions. You had a war, of course, break out in Ukraine. And then, of course, the Middle East explodes, and the situation in China and Taiwan has always been extremely bad. There's 2 or 3 other genocides going on, which are incredibly bad, but they can't compete with the other stuff going on, so nobody even hears about them. And so it's a photo finish here. And so one of the reasons that I'm desperately trying to get a hearing in the Senate, try to get this done now as soon as possible, as opposed to playing it out, see how it goes, maybe look to next year, is I don't know if there's going to be a next year. And I get that message out. People accuse me of being a fearmonger. Other people accuse me of being a ridiculous optimist, right? And so I've decided that I'm an optimist. Optimist? Yeah, optimist mind. So anyway, this is where we are at. And it's a race, and it's very stressful. I'm not doing well. I'm having to use medications, as it were, to keep from not cracking up. So now, let's talk about the moment right now. In the last 7 years, we've had unprecedented developments, things that have never happened before. Essentially, it's not that the dam broke, but the wall started breaking down, right?
And analogy, yep.
And now, or the side of the mountain started to slip. Around 2017, picked up speed around 2020, and now it's really moving down the mountainside. It's like an avalanche, all right? And so in the last 4 years, we've had 4 separate tranches of legislation on this issue. Prior to those 4 years, bupkis. Each bill was a little more powerful than the next, and the 4th one was huge, too huge. And so last year, that ultimate disclosure bill, and I'm going to take a little credit that Senator Schumer called it the UAP Disclosure Act, but I think some other my colleagues would be happy to take some credit. No problem. That was the ultimate bill. That was it. That was all basically the legislation needed to take care of it all, meaning over a period of years, get it all out. Of course, the truth embargo would have to end, right? Meaning the president would have to confirm as soon as possible. But that act would have helped make it possible, plus the hearing that we're going to have in front of the Senate. I assure you, the president is not going to just sit there, he or she, and see all this happening and ET stuff coming out and DT bodies being forward and just be going, I don't know what's going on. No, they've got to end the embargo, and that will just speed up the process. So we have been closing in on that. We had 4 tranches of legislation. We've had admirals and high-level people in the military. We've had scientists coming forward and saying there's an ET presence. Organizations are forming of great size. All right. And the issue was all over the place, all worldwide. It's being covered extensively. Thousands of articles are being written. I've logged in 7,000 linked articles on my web archive in just the last 4 years.
You know, you really just said it, and I want you to hear yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
ET presence, not UAPs, not UFOs, extraterrestrial presence.
Yeah.
They won't even admit that yet. It's not even in their vocabulary.
Non-human intelligence.
It's in their
Not
private.
even, right? Yeah. It doesn't even. It's extraterrestrial people coming here.
It's like diplomacy, right? You're going to negotiate a treaty with a foreign power. Okay.
Yeah.
You go in and you got to say things in a certain way. You just can't go in and say, "Look, you guys are a bunch of craven assholes, and you're either going to work with us or we're going to rid the world." You can't do that, right? And so, what we figured out, and I helped to bring about, is that if you're going to, if you want the journalists, the high-end journalists, to get involved, if you want politicians to risk their political standing, if you want just anybody in the mainstream world to engage this issue in such a way that it can move forward to disclosure, you've got to come up with language that they can use. UFO was corrupt. You couldn't use it. To just say it was a problem. So we came up with UAP. No problem. Truth embargo is easier to say than UFO cover-up, so I don't mention that. Extraterrestrial, while not as stigmatized as UFO, is still a problem. And so they came up with non-human biologics and so forth. So the language you are hearing does not reflect what they know about this phenomena. It reflects the necessary language to be able to get the Congress to do what it has to do, the DOD to do what it has to do, get the hearings done in front of the Senate, while at the same time they're running for office. And of course, the political battles are vicious, right? And to the extent that you can destigmatize the language, you minimize the likelihood of the issue being used as a weapon, partisan weapon, of one party against the other, which is not happening.
I have a problem with politically correct rhetoric. The government needs to spill. They need to quit pandering. They need to quit saying it's this and not this. They need to stop using baby language. They need to speak to us like we are adults, like we are in command of ourselves, and that we're intelligent enough to hear the truth. Period, the end. And scientific language is a really good way to start. That's what I'm saying. That's what I want to hear. If you want to hear disclosure, let's go for that. Period. I'm tired of Congress telling me, and the governments, all of them, that I don't matter enough to speak clearly to, intelligently to, and the truth to. Period. And they need to cough up now. It's too close. And you're right. It's too close because they're going to start killing people. You don't start a war for no reason, period. And we all know this. And
we need to get disclosure.
Billions of people are going to die.
We need to get disclosure, right? And it is remember I said, it's not a scientific issue. It's a political issue. And therefore, it's politics. And politics is about language, cooperation, and all of that stuff. And so the language that they're using is what works. It's not an accident that you've heard nothing about a contactee testifying.
Exactly.
Right? That's not going to happen. That's not being up there. They're not bringing contactees up, I don't believe, to brief anybody.
They're never going to do that. They're terrified of them.
Once disclosure comes, I'll make you a promise. Once disclosure is out of the way, the president has confirmed it. Everybody knows it. The other heads of state have agreed. Yep, we're not alone. They're here. And the world goes into the post-disclosure era. There is going to be nothing but hearings for the next year after that. Hearings everywhere. And at some point, there's going to be a hearing in front of a major committee of the United States Congress in which nothing but contactees are going to be sitting at the witness table. Now, those that are running the truth, those that are managing this process, the disclosure process, who have my appreciation, right? They think it's going to be X amount of months before that happens. And I'm just letting them know now it's going to be a lot sooner than you think. And a perfect example of that is this. And I'm just giving you little predictions here so that you can email, tell me how smart I am. Is that the hearings will happen in the Senate. Warner is the key there. I hope he holds them between the election and the inauguration, or even before the new Congress takes over. In other words, the end of November. In December, anytime end of November, December. If we get those hearings, that's it. The president can do it. It'll end up being Biden. So what? He's leaving office, but he'll get the legacy on the way out the door. The point is, those hearings will ultimately set up the president to disclose. So let's say Biden comes out and discloses. Okay, there's extraterrestrials here. I watched the hearing. I'm convinced. My top people are convinced. Boom. Every journalist within, 500 miles of Washington is heading for Washington. Every bureau chief is going to be crowding every briefing room that makes sense in this town, packed, literally out the doors, ready to ask all the questions. Right?
What do you think the first question is going to be from those people?
And
where are the bodies? Where are the crashed vehicles? Show them
sure.
now.
One of the first questions is going to be questions like, okay, when can you reveal to us the location of these crashes? When are we going to actually see these vehicles and so forth? Now, hopefully, the UAP Disclosure Act will be in place by then. And just for your edification, it's rumored now that Senator Rounds is going to drop the UAP Disclosure Act again into play after the election. Okay, so it's still possible it could get passed and signed by the end of the year. But that aside, once disclosure happens, they're going to be in there with questions, endless questions. Okay, fine. I'm going to make you a prediction. On day one, maybe in more than one briefing room, a reporter is going to raise their hand. Actually, they're going to, get their attention somehow, right? I don't know how they pick them. And the question from that reporter is going to be very simple. Given that you have now confirmed that there are non-humans here, right, from elsewhere, does that mean that what we've been hearing about humans being abducted or taken by these non-humans and being dealt with in some way or fashion, is that true or not? They're going to ask that question on day one because it's too well known. And all the restraints are off, right? Once the president confirms, and everybody is interested in the biggest story to get the most eyeballs, make lots of money, win Pulitzer Prizes. Day one. And I don't care who is leading that briefing.
And you don't think that's going to strike fear into human beings?
No, they already know.
The word abductee alone is enough to terrorize almost everybody I know.
Terrorize people. Abduction, that phenomenon has
been
in movies, it's been in books, it's been in documentaries, it's talked about all the time.
That doesn't make it any less impactful. It is still going to scare the pants off of everybody.
I'm not saying
they don't abduct.
I'm just saying, like the idea of abduction, I'm not getting terror from people when I talk about it. I bring it up in conferences. People don't run out of the room. It's getting normalized. Now, having it made real will be, but here's the deal. The vast majority of people are not contactees. And so the ones that aren't contactees, why do they care? And so the
1 in 40 are contactees worldwide. That is proven. 1 in 40 worldwide. 1 in
40%.
That's a lot of people.
That's
look it up.
That's a big number.
It is. It's more than 2%. 1 in 40 are contacted. There are people all over this planet that will say that to you. It is the numbers. MUFON knows it. ATIP knows it. They all know it. The government knows it. 1 in 40.
Well, that means that 39 and 40 are not contactees, so they're not going to be terrified unless they're afraid they're going to become one, right? Which is not likely. I'm just saying that you don't underestimate the ability of human beings to adapt to.
Yeah, we adapt pretty well.
Yeah. And so that question is going to be asked. And whoever is leading that briefing had better not make the mistake of going, I'm not aware of this contactee thing. Or no, we've looked into that and that's not happening. That would be a very
the second mistake they're going to make is if they do admit that we're contacted, that they better not say that they're a threat. That's what's imminently going to happen.
The problem.
One of the things that you have, one of the threads that you have seen going all the way back to 2017, with respect to all of the major players, Elizondo and Mellon, the witnesses have come forward, Graves, so forth, even Grush and others. One of the threads is the threat issue. And by and large, Most of the time they do the right thing, and they talk about potential threat because it is a potential threat. But sometimes they just leave off potential and they just say threat, which is really implying the same thing. It's like when they use it, they're really making it as a potential threat. And I've talked to a lot of people now that get that. There isn't really any hardcore threat narrative out there at this point. That doesn't mean
there's no evidence of threat. That's the point.
That
is
the power structure of the power elite. That's it. The ET threat is to the control over the people.
Look, I'm not going to debate that. I think I sort of agree. I mean, based on what I know about the ET presence, I think they are not a threat, but they are a potential threat. Now, look.
From a military standpoint,
you got to.
Are you more afraid of going to war right now, or are you more afraid of ET? That's what everybody's talking about. I mean, you have to take the voice of the people with you when you go before these people and talk to them and say, you need to tell us. That's part of the rhetoric.
I want to take some time to answer some of the questions in chat because we got like 15 minutes left.
Only 15? It's been an hour and 45. Let me just say real quickly. Let me say this. You got a butcher knife in your kitchen, right?
Yeah.
Is that a threat? No. Is it a potential threat? Yeah, it is, right? And so you will tell your children, look, I don't want you to walking around with that knife because it is a potential threat. And so this has been a threat. They've had to deal with it. And
has
this is not
shown
these
weapons.
ET.
See, no, wait, you made a point. Has ET shown weapons?
No, he's already agreed to this. ET is not a threat.
Has ET shot at us? No, they have not. And any
information would they? I mean, that's the point. Would they?
Would they? They've had thousands and thousands and thousands of years to take us off this planet, and they have not done it. They have done nothing to the human race, period.
Yeah, but from a military standpoint,
taking a woman and implanting her with a an in vitro or creating.
You got to ask yourself how that's possible because ETs are breeding with us back and forth. That makes them humanoid. That makes them human as well.
If you're a woman, there are women that are not happy about this, and they view being taken in that way is not a fun thing, and therefore it's a threatening thing to them. And to the general public, the idea of abduction, which is still the word that's used, though it's not the only kind of contact that takes place.
Most people I've interviewed don't use that term.
Abduction is a potentially threatening term. But again, because of all the truth embargo and the lack of so many missing dots and the lack of information, it is much more difficult to manage the idea of threat versus potential threat. And that has been an issue going along. But I followed it very closely. And overall, the opportunity for big time threat narratives to develop is there, but it hasn't happened. It just hasn't happened. You're not seeing it in the hearing. You're not seeing it in the Hill. It's not coming from the people that are coming out. It's not. I
read it in Lou Elizondo's book. Clearly read it. Threat narrative.
Well, that brings up the first question I want to bring up from chat.
Yeah.
This is from Michael Kennedy. What is your opinion on Louis Elizondo and Stephen Greer? I generally don't want to personally don't comment on other researchers, but I want to give you the opportunity to do if you want.
I don't either. Let me put it this way. I will. I'm very careful about how I deal with other people in this field. We are all part of a major movement. This is not easy, right? Yeah. And it's not a popularity contest either. No. Greer has made enormous contributions. He's heavily funded. He's brilliant. He's done a whole lot of things. And because he's done so much, the more you do, the more opportunity to maybe do something that bothers somebody or to make a mistake. But he's the one that started the use of disclosure, capital D with a disclosure, small d with a disclosure project. He's made multiple documents. He's a major player, right? But he started out with a few $1,000,000, and I started out with 26 cents in my pocket.
Right. And so to show you don't need money to tell the truth or give data or facts. That's
technically you kind of do, but nevertheless,
only the government's
the word out it helps, but
it helps, yeah. So, and then in terms of Elizondo, look, Elizondo's a national hero. Grush is a national hero. They're both Presidential Medal of Freedom candidates. Mellon, to some degree, I think so as well. These are the kind of leaders of this extraordinary 7 years. There are a few others, But these are the ones that emerged from the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences that carried the ball forward, which I think was the plan all along. I think a couple of others might have been part of that group that were going to go forward, but made the decision to step back, like Semi-Van, certainly like Steve Justice. Though just coming forward, Justice made an extraordinary statement. A lot of people didn't pick up on that. And so Elizondo has been through hell. Now, Elizondo has been through hell.
I'm sure he's been through hell on both sides of the fact. He's also a government worker who is compartmentalized. There's no doubt in my mind or knowledge or experience that tells me otherwise. He is compartmentalized, and he only knows what he's been told to know, and he's only doing what he's told to say or not say. That makes it not him a suspect, but it makes him uniquely compartmentalized. In other words, he's one point in a mass of points. Okay. Oh. And we have to weigh who's saying what, when, and how, and where. And disclosure has to be where everybody uncompartmentalizes and everybody tells the absolute truth. And Luis Elizondo will wake up with the rest of us when he hears the truth, if he gets to hear the truth. And so will every other government worker who's been compartmentalized. We have to see the forest for the trees in all of this, period. If we don't try to do that, we're just as bad off as we ever were. And that starts with us individually. Every human being on this planet needs to wake up to this. It's you can't tell the truth without somebody who can receive the truth. And if we're not ready for it, they're not going to give it to us. If they're not ready for it, we're not going to give it to them. It's communication, and we got to start thinking in those terms. You were correct in saying that the perfect world or the perfect place is where everybody just tells the truth, period.
I didn't put it that way. I said that in the post-disclosure world, right?
Why can't it happen now? It needs to start now. That's the race we're in. Truth versus anarchy.
Well, that's why we're doing this show.
Right.
Well, it's like big complex issues have to be worked out. They just don't happen, right? They're not like a nova going off. Now, in terms of Lou, all in the pre-disclosure world, which is where we are, everyone coming forward that it's work for the government absolutely is limited to what they can say, right? And that's why you constantly hear this term DOPSR referred to, which is the Department of Defense Pre-Publication Security and Review Office. And the way that works is that if you want to write a book, if you want to give a lecture or whatever, and you're under security clearance, they have to know what you're going to say, and they will tell you what you can say and what you can't say. Right. And what is interesting is in this final 7 years, what DOPSR has been willing to let people say is really quite remarkable. So I'm more impressed. What impresses me is that while Lou can't say everything he'd want to say, what he has been allowed to say and Grash has been allowed to say is extraordinary. And so the message is clear. The United States government, particularly the Department of Defense, has already internally and to some degree externally acknowledged that the truth embargo was ending. Disclosure is going to come. And they're putting themselves on the side of the angels. And they are helping. They are doing what they can to advance it, but within certain limits, because we're talking about a very huge thing involving untold thousands of people and politics and this and that and everything else. And so, and there's national security associated to it. And so what's happening is that DOPSR is allowing more and more to come out. And that, of course, is driving the issue. Every witness that comes out and says anything makes it easier for another witness to come out. There's another one that just turned up recently that may be significant. He's a secondhand witness, but he's already dumped his information to Snellenberger, who is a highly competent investigative reporter, who passed it on to Coulthard. Coulthard has talked to the guy. It may be true. And so he may have just added a USAP called Immaculate Constellation. But he's still secondhand, but there's going to be more of that.
Have there been one single firsthand witness, period? Have there? Right. Has there been one single
with respect
witness for disclosure come forward yet?
Now, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, all of the nuclear weapons guys are firsthand, and they've been wanting to testify for 40 years, and I'm working on getting them in front of a committee right now. But Bob Salas is a firsthand witness, and so is Schindel, so is...
because they won't even admit NORAD happened, okay?
No, it's not they don't admit, they ignore it. In other words, of all the witnesses out there, the nuclear shutdown witnesses are probably the most problematic for the Department of Defense.
Oh, yeah.
Because unlike anything else, unlike the pilots, anything else you could refer to, these were the biggest problem. Now, they came out almost 40 years ago, and which, of course, is way early, right? The truth embargo was rolling along. So you're talking 77, 78. I mean, but anyway, they come forward. They say, look, we were present when these weapons were shut down with the presence of an ET or craft, non-human craft.
Can you infer a reason why that happened?
Well,
I mean, what would be the thing that you thought if you were in the middle of that and all that stuff happened and you knew it was happening and you were aware of it? What would be the first thing to hit your brain pan?
Well, first thing, you know, I don't know what would hit my brain when I'm standing there. Look, if I'm one of the security guys and I'm seeing this thing hovering over the nuclear ICBM site, I don't know what the hell I would think. I know one of the guys panicked and tried to climb over that barbed wire fence and injured himself.
That sure did.
What Bob Salas was thinking, I don't know. However, I have said this many times, and I'm happy to repeat it.
Okay.
The most significant thing, and I'm talking about the whole enchilada, contact, abduction, MJ12, all the files, everything that we know. The most significant thing we know about ETs, non-human biologics, whatever the hell you want to call them, is that on a number of occasions, they have turned off the ICBM weapons of our nuclear force, and they've also done it in the Soviet Union. That is the single
they've done it in China. They've done it in, yes, they've done it in almost they've done it in every single country that has nuclear capabilities. Every single country. And there's a reason why. You don't turn something off for no reason. You turn it off to make them understand that you want them to keep it off.
Well, that's why well, obviously, that's why I say it's the single most important piece of information that we know about them.
Using nuclear power.
Of the explanation. Now, there's more than one possible explanation, but there are two that I have emphasized dramatically. And they are at the heart of my message right now, which I pound and pound away. And I'm sure some people are thinking, Jesus Christ, would you come up with another explanation? We're so tired of hearing that. But hey, this is it. It's as big as it gets. Two explanations. One, okay. We actually care about you. Right?
Correct.
We admire the fact that you are a sophisticated civilization. You have a lot of good qualities. It took a long time for your civilization to become where it is. Now it's a little too big. You're starting to damage your own planet. But yeah, we've seen this before. And you have your good aspects. You are a sentient species living on a planet of life. It's very cool. And the idea that you would destroy most of this, damage your planet, set yourself back hundreds of years, seems to us like a total waste, and we prefer you didn't do that. Okay.
You succinctly stated it very clearly. That's exactly one of the top reasons why.
We're going to have to wrap it up, guys. We got 4 minutes.
No.
Oh. All right. So it says, but the second reason is the killer reason, the one that I am projecting. It's a connect the dots thing. A lot of people say you can't prove it. Of course I can't, but boy, I like these dots. And that is this. Is there a time frame? Is there a time frame with respect to the ET presence? Why did they suddenly escalate after the bombs were dropped in 45? Why is it continuing?
The answer to that, I can tell you right now, in your presence. You want to know the answer? I got it. Here you go. We have 4 minutes. I can give it to you in 2. The reason is this. Our solar system is a calamity in the process. Catastrophic events are about to happen, and we have very limited time to save ourselves from it. And if we don't save ourselves, most of us will die. Okay. And they know it, and they've been trying to get the governments of this world to admit it to everybody and work out a plan better than the one they've worked out. Period. Okay. The end.
That falls under pretty much the aegis of what I just said. But here is the other one. And this is something that most citizens simply don't even think about or know about.
Okay.
We are much closer to solving the star drive, interstellar drive problem than people understand. We're closing in on it. We've done it in all of our movies. Got your warp drive, wormholes, whatever the hell. I believe there's star to star, which means that can happen, which means that there's a technology you need to know. We've had crash vehicles. But there's a physics underway. There's multiple areas where this is going on. The equations are coming together. We're closing in on the solution to star travel, at least at the speed of light, maybe not greater than that, without time dilation. Now, what does that mean? It means that within 20 or 30 years, we could build a starship. Well, that's a
not
problem.
true. That's misinformation that you've been fed. It's none of it's true. It is
Nobody feeds
physically-
me information.
it is- oh, well, all right. Well, then I will tell you that those are improbabilities. They
We have
cannot
ET
happen.
tech. I think that's
Theoretically
what-
incorrect, because the
Well,
science cannot back that up.
I,
They know
let's
already.
disagree to disagree. I've been surveying the
ET
science for
uses
almost 20 years.
interdimensional drive travel, and they use it with a certain type of technology that we don't possess and will not for eons.
I
They've
disagree.
tried to show us that.
I understand. I
Well,
disagree.
then that's a serious problem, because if you tell people this over and over and over again without proof, they're going to believe that and not the truth.
I always
That's why I
tell
get
them,
upset about
what
that.
I tell them is this
Yeah.
is an assessment based upon what we know. It's not confirmable at this time, but based upon the research that's underway by a number of groups, I believe that we're very close to star-to-star travel. And that is important. Why? Because the moment we can go out of our solar system, for the first time in our entire history, we become a threat to them. Because they clearly understand one thing, and that is if we build a starship, we're putting some nukes on that because, hey, you got to be careful, right? Can't take any chances. And they are never going to allow the human race to build starships, put nukes on them, and head on out to sea and go where no man has gone before. And to me, that's the time delimiter on why they keep pushing this, right? They have a certain amount of patience. But as we get close to that star travel capability, they are eventually, if we haven't done it already, they're going to step in and force majeure this, and it'll just be more uncomfortable, right? And more upsetting. But that to me is the two reasons why they turn off the nukes. One, they're going to, you can't defend, you can't use them to defend.
You realize that they've shot nukes at ET already.
You guys, we know what? We're out of time.
They don't work.
We have
They
literally
can't hurt
1
them.
minute.
They are more advanced than you could possibly imagine. We're not talking thousands,
We're out of
not
time.
talking millions. We're talking billions of years in advance of us. And you got to wake up to that real fast. That's what the government's afraid of. They're already paranoid. We don't need to egg it on.
Okay, we're
They've
going
always
to
been,
stop
they've
the
always
show.
been paranoid.
So, Steve, if you want,
They're
you want
paranoid.
to take a second to announce any of your websites or anything like that?
Let me quickly do some shares. Let me do
Please.
a couple shares. So much
Yeah.
happening.
We say we have to go now, but we actually have 5 more minutes. So go for
Okay.
it.
I'm going to do some shares here. First of all, I want to mention that one of the major developments of late is the New Paradigm Institute, Danny Sheehan's organization. It's a think tank. Now it's funded. It's going to get millions more soon. It has many multiple projects going on at the same time, including a Global Disclosure Day coming up on the 20th. I'll be speaking online on that. They just did a teach-in at Yale. This website is filled with projects. It's going to be the leading think tank in the post-disclosure world. It's a major factor right now. Again, nothing like this has really existed prior to this. And so please, if you happen to have a few $1 million laying around, you need to donate them to this 501c3 nonprofit. Meanwhile, another organization formed recently. Again, this is all the result of the fact that we're closing in on the end of the truth embargo. And that's the Soul Foundation. Now, this is a science think tank that was started by a very important person by the name of Gary Nolan, a Nobel Prize nominee and geneticist with an endowed chair at Stanford. Again, that's kind of new to this field in a way. And this is loaded with scientists, and they're setting this up in order to address the scientific issues that clearly are going to explode in the post-disclosure world. Meanwhile, recently, this was formed. Now, this is the UAP Disclosure Fund, and the people involved in that are just about all the players, right? Elizondo and Nolan, Carl Nell, Christopher Mellon, right? And this is, guess what? Remember, I was the first lobbyist in 1996. This is the first, I believe, 501c3 political nonprofit that is being created in order to put money in the hands of the right politicians in the post-disclosure world. Meanwhile, Paradigm Research Group has gone nonprofit, and very soon you're going to see from me this up on my page announcing I'm a nonprofit and I can now accept tax-free donations because I'm about to convert into a small boutique think tank with a board of advisors, with contributors to address the issues of the post-disclosure world. But I'm a little more nimble, fast on my feet. I'm hoping I can raise 40 or 50,000. I can hold some conferences. And so that's coming. This is the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. This is only a year old, only entity of its kind. Dan Harari and I founded this a year ago. And oh, I'm sorry, that's not it. I'm talking about, where'd it go? Come here, come here. Is it this? 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 Oh, I'm not even sharing these things because I didn't close out. I'm sorry.
It's
You're
okay.
not seeing those second ones because I had to close out and come back. So forgive me. I'm still learning how to do this crap. Okay, here is the Soul Foundation. All right, share that. Okay, take a look. These are the people involved. Gary Nolan. They're going to be doing scientific research in the post-disclosure world. This is the where do we go today? This is well, I've lost the other ones. The New Paradigm Institute. Hang on, got to go back here. Got to go to share. I'm sorry, just so I get rushed and I don't know what I'm doing. Hang on.
It's okay. I'm helping you out. You don't know it, but I'm putting it up on the screen for you. You put it in the block, and I'll put it up.
Okay. Okay. I got to upload a file, and no, that's not it. You don't do it that way. I got to do this. Hang on. New Paradigm Institute is a big deal. That's the one I definitely wanted to promote. I'm going back.
Oh. Well, he knocked himself. Okay. I'm going to leave it this way, y'all. He is very adamant about what he's talking about, and I give kudos to him for two reasons. One, he is effectively making a difference, and I am 100% behind that. I know that there's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of things that need to be said and put forth, but at least somebody's out there trying, and that's fantastic in my book. I may not always agree with some of the things he thinks or says, but I agree 100% with his premise, and he needs to keep going. We love y'all. Thank you, everyone, for all your donations tonight. Thank you for visiting us tonight. We've had a lot of people in the room with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're going to close out now because we got to rapidly go. This is the Light Gate. We're coming to you from New Orleans at the United Public Radio Network at 107.7 FM and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 M. We are Roku. We're Rumble. We are YouTube. We are Facebook. And here he is again. Let me put him back. Okay, we're almost done. Go ahead.
I'm clicking away and I canceled it.
That's okay.
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 New Paradigm Institute, right? It is Danny Sheehan's new think tank. It is a major deal. They're doing all kinds of projects. And I encourage people to go to newparadigminstitute.org and check it out. We have a Global Disclosure Day 2-hour live stream coming up on the 20th. That's mentioned on the website. I'll be presenting along with Danny and many others. He is writing new legislation for the Congress. The UAP bill may get reinserted. And then we have this election coming up on the 5th, which should prove interesting. But frankly, I'm more interested in the other stuff. But it's happening, folks. We're close. We're very close to ending this truth embargo. We could even do it before the end of the year. So keep your fingers crossed. It's in the hands of Mark Warner. He's ready to, if he calls a hearing and brings in 20 witnesses, they're ready to come. It's over. And we can move on to the next world and hopefully do better the next time.
Well, I'm praying you're correct. And I'm sending you all the energy and hope to you.
Namaste.
Yes.
Namaste.
Thanks very much, Steve. We really enjoyed the discussion.
Not everybody. Steve, stay with us because I want to try to get you back on again. All right.
Okay.
We love y'all. We already called off. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.